5 scores! Rick Bud.
We decided to get ourselves back in the game again with our podcast.
Rick Bud and Gary Neville.
Probably the craziest story that you're ever going to hear about hockey.
We're going to be coming back to you on a regular basis.
You are listening to Squid and the Ultimate Leafs Fan.
Hello, Canada and hockey fans of the United States and Newfoundland, and an extra big hello to Canadian servicemen overseas.
Well, welcome everyone to the Squid and Ultimate Leaf Fan Show. I'm Mike Wilson, the Ultimate Leafs fan. Joining me as always, my winger Ricky Squid Vibe. Squid, how are we keeping?
We're doing pretty good, Mike. Still getting out golfing every day and enjoying it. And the weather's been spectacular here for the last few days, so it's been great.
Fantastic. Well, I'll tell you, we got a beauty today. Our guest has a resume that could take up the whole show, so here we go. Drafted in the 6th round by Philadelphia in 1983. Never played a game in the minors. Developed in the template of the power forward. Captain of the Flyers. Played 1,144 games over 18 seasons. Scored 440 goals, 512 assists, 952 points, along with just close to 3,000 minutes in penalties. The all-time leader of the Gordie Howe hat trick with 18. Howe, by the way, had only 2. Won a cup with Pittsburgh as a player in 92. 2 as an assistant with Pittsburgh back-to-back in 16 and 17. That's 2000. And instrumental in the famous Team Canada comeback against Russia in 1987. Head coaching gigs in Tampa and recently in Arizona. If we pump his tires anymore, he's going to be circling over with Jeff Bezos. So please welcome to the Squid and Ultimate Leaf Fan Show, Ricky Tocchet. Tock, how are we doing?
Well, so you got my check, right? Thanks for the intro. Too kind. Thank you.
Hey, so how you keeping busy these days since the season ended?
Yeah, well, for about a month there, I was interviewing for jobs, so that did go too. Actually, the process, guys, it went really well. It was Seattle and Rangers and Columbus and Buffalo. I love the process. Really good. Like, I thought the GMs were great. The round table was fun doing. So I did that for about a month. Now we've got a couple options, weighing a few options right now, seeing what's going on, and we'll go from here.
Fantastic. I want to say we have so much to talk about with you, and I want to start going back to the beginning in Scarborough, Ontario, kind of a hockey hotbed of players, as we know from our era growing up in that period. Just speak to the early years leading up to playing in the Sioux for Terry Crisp.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I loved my parents who moved from Italy, and you know them really well. They drove me everywhere, every hockey rink, George Bell and Commander Park, all these different rinks, and I just fell in love with hockey. Obviously, watching Squid and the Leafs every Saturday night was something. There's not. I remember 8 o'clock sitting on the couch with my mom, watching these guys play was like a highlight of the week. And then obviously just, going through the minor hockey system in Toronto, had some great coaches, some great players that I play with. Fun, it was a lot of tournaments. That was part of my childhood, obviously going to school, but that was a big part of my childhood. And then getting drafted by the Sioux and going up to the Sioux with Terry Crisp. But it was, you guys know it's a hockey hotbed. There's no better place to grow up being a hockey player than Toronto.
Well, as an inside kind of story here for those from Scarborough that are listening to this, the way it goes is Rick is the youngest of 3 brothers. And, his late father, God rest his soul, he had sports on his mind. But I think when Andy was the oldest, Andy got an accordion. The second youngest brother, Danny, got a set of running shoes and became athlete of the year at Wexford Collegiate. And Ricky got the skates. So you can figure it out from there.
Yeah, listen, my brother Andy, man, we always hear about it. He got the accordion, the poor guy, he did get the accordion.
Squid.
Oh boy. Yeah, well, so you go from the city, you get drafted by Philadelphia. Yeah. You go to your first season, what was your biggest adjustment? We've talked to some guys. A lot of them. It's a little bit different, and the game obviously has changed quite a bit since then. Was it speed, or was it what was the biggest challenge for you going into the pros?
Well, I mean, these guys are men, right? They're in junior. you always get some, you get some mismatches out there. When you're a 19-year-old playing against 16 or 17-year-old, you get some. In the NHL, there's not many mismatches. And when I got the NHL, and I always tell players nowadays, and I was, my third year I was a scorer in junior, but I knew going to the NHL my first year listen, I'm not going to be scoring at that pace, or maybe not even all. So I had to have another tool in my bag. So I remember Mike Keenan said, hey, listen, you better be able to check Mark Howe and Brad McCrimmon, who were instrumental in just leadership for me. I remember they told me, make sure you're good in our own end, make sure in the neutral zone. And back then you could be able to get in front of people, and I remember you could water ski a guy. So they said, make sure when you guys are forechecking, make sure you get on top of you guys and give me some time to get the puck. And I took a lot of pride in that. And Brian McCurry, Mark Howell told me, and I remember going to every game. I said, hey, nobody's going to get by me in the neutral zone. It was this. So I guess what I'm saying to these guys, you got to bring something else to the table. If you're not scoring goals, and I think that was something that I learned that early on, make sure that you play the game the right way. If you're not getting those goals, it was like, I wasn't scoring right off the bat, right? You had to develop that game. So that was one thing I learned. Try to play good defense and play aggressive. I mean, we had an aggressive team. And be that role player or that puzzle guy that every team needs.
Well, I was going to say to you now, the fighting side of your game, how did that come to be? I mean, you really weren't wired that way growing up playing, unless you're fighting with your brothers. But what's your thought process going into junior I'm going back to junior now when you played for Chris. Yeah. Playing the junior, your ice time is going to be limited, obviously, as a new player in the league.
Yeah.
And maybe only getting a few shifts a game. Is this just one of these things you want to leave a memory when you're on the ice?
Yeah, I mean, I've always was a guy try to help your teammates out in the scrum if somebody's getting picked on or whatever. I was always that type of guy to help my teammates out. But I got to tell you, I was really lucky. I mean, I feel sorry for some guys. I went to Sault Ste. Marie. We had a tough team. We had one of the toughest teams. Then I go to Philadelphia, and we probably had the toughest team. Our minor league team was probably tougher than half the NHL team. So I was lucky. We had 6 or 7 deep. Some guys, I know some of my buddies, there's only 1 or 2 guys, but we were lucky to have a lot of guys. And, the Tim Kerrs and the Brian Props of the world, they could just play the game. So I kind of learned to protect your teammates and, the team toughness. And, like I said, guys, I was lucky to go to the Sioux in Philly where we had a very deep team in toughness. And that could play too. It wasn't just fighting. It was guys.
No question. No, and I was going to say, because junior, I mean, the one way to be noticed is when you're on the ice, let them know you're there. And I'm going to say, especially for you going to your first camp in Philly and starting to play, let's face it, 6th-round draft picks aren't supposed to get a sniff, never mind make the team.
Yeah, I mean, you have to develop your own game. I mean, you look at Ricky. I mean, Ricky had that slap shot going down the wing, and then, the goalies would come out, then you'd fake and go around. I remember all those tricks, right? So those are the things those are the things you try to develop. But a lot of my goals, I mean, I try to establish in front of the net. I mean, that was a lot of my goals. And you got to look for that room. You're banging in front with some of the, the Danicos and the Scott Stevens of the world, and you're looking for your space. So the odd time you'd have to drop the gloves because you're telling these guys, hey, I'm not moving. And one thing I hope that the NHL, not to get off topic, is the cross checks. That was when I usually had most of my fights, is when I got cross checked from a defenseman. Back then, you can ask Ricky, it was freebies. The defenseman's going to shoot the puck, you're going to deflect it, and the guy would just cross check it from behind, no penalty. And I think it's coming back a little bit. There, the playoffs, I thought I saw a lot of cross checks they let go. So that's one thing I'd like to see them eliminate. I love the tough hockey, but that cross check to me in front is a dangerous play.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that, because I mean, I went through that as well. I mean, when they eliminated my ability to come down the wing and score, well, you had to find another way to do it, and that was go to the front of the net. And you're taking off a lot of abuse and, fighting. I mean, I did it early in my career, and the reason I did it was basically, you know what? I'm not going anywhere, guys. You can do whatever you want to me. You can try and intimidate me, but I'm not going anywhere. So get used to it, and that was kind of my mindset. And then when Mike Nicola came in and he said to me, Rick, we need you on the ice. We can't afford to have you in the box. I was like, okay, thank you very much, Mike, because I'm getting the shit kicked out of me most nights, and I'm not really liking it. So,
Well, you don't want your 50
we
goals.
were fortunate enough, Rick, to have.
Yeah,
We
you don't want
were
your 50
fortunate
goals
enough
against
to have a
Florida.
lot of tough guys on our team. So there was really nobody to stick up for us and take care of us until Wendell came along. But then we needed Wendell on the ice too. So that was the difference between our team and Philly and a lot of other teams in the NHL back then. Was they had 4 or 5 guys that looked after everybody. We didn't have that.
Yeah, and plus, listen, Rick, you don't want your 30, 40, 50 goal scorers like yourself, in the box all night. I mean, and that's what the other team's trying to do, right? So it's a mix, it's a balance. It's when you have a bunch of guys that everybody takes their share, it's a lot easier. So yeah, I mean, you guys didn't have a lot of until Wendell got there. You didn't, Tiger was there, he was tough, but you guys didn't have a lot of team toughness, but you had some good players there, and you want you guys on the ice. So I agree, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say now, let's go to Philly.
Yeah.
What did you know about Mike Keenan as a coach before arriving?
I didn't know a lot about him, Mike. He was, until we met him, but, we heard he was tough. We didn't know he was that tough. Like when he first came in, he sent a message. It's going to be tough. He wanted us to be the best shaped team in the league. And I mean, he was ahead of his time. I got to admit, like, I'm not to speak for Rick, but I know there were other coaches back in the old days. They'd have hour and a half practices. Mike was a 45-minute high tempo. So he was ahead of his time. Training camps, he kicked the hell out of us. They were tough training camps. Weight belts. He was tough, but he was ahead of his time. Everybody had their own water bottle and a lot of team dinners. I don't know if a lot of teams didn't do that. We had team meals. So I think he was ahead of his time when it came to that stuff. But like I said, he was tough. Probably couldn't do the stuff nowadays and get away with it. But he made me a better hockey player for sure.
Well, I was going to say his name comes up a lot on the show and not always in favorable settings. Jaromir, a lot of guys we've had on talk a lot about him, but they have respect for him in a way. Yeah. You had your issues with him, but would you be fair to say that he pushed the right buttons on you to elevate your game?
Yeah, for sure. Mike, I owe a lot for Mike, what he's done. He was great for me. And I talked to Mike, I haven't talked to him a long time, but we've talked. I was at Wayne Gretzky's fantasy camp and he was there and we had spent a lot of time there talking, had a few drinks. And I remember the only thing that really bothered me, Mike, I told him this and he admitted it. We won like 16 straight in Philly one year and we went into Chicago and we lost 3-2. It was a hell of a game. A couple of fights, but it was a great hockey and we lost. And I remember Mike was ripping us after the game. And I remember I told Mike, I think you lost the team there. And we won 16 straight. We have guys in the corner that are bleeding. But he wanted us to win so bad. He just, sometimes you lose the big picture, right? But we talked about that stuff. And, those are the things. But, there's other times where Mike, he'd have team parties for us or he'd pick up a tab at a bar at a restaurant. Like he did a lot of great things for us, but there's some stuff that he wishes I don't know if he regrets it. I mean, he would have done different. But like I said, he really helped me through my career for sure.
Squid.
Now, Rick, did he, I know when I went to Chicago and then they got rid of Bob Murdoch and then they brought Mike in and, the first thing he did was he basically went after all the top players. And I think, and I'm assuming that it was because he wanted everybody to know that he's the boss. Don't listen to anybody else but me. I got to agree with you. He was way ahead of his time. He was unbelievable on the bench. He did a great job on the bench. He read the bench really well, made good changes. But sometimes he could be such a dick. I mean, it was like, and like I said, he went after the best players and said, basically, I'm the boss. I don't give a shit who you are. You're going to do it my way, and that's all there is to it.
You're right. That was his method to his madness, and I think it worked in Philly. We were young guys, so the Timmy Kerrs, Brian Propp, Dave Poole, and those guys. Mark Howe. He went after those guys quite a bit, but we were all young, and we just kind of did our thing. But I think once we start maturing. And we're like, hey, man, this, you got to settle down here. We had great leaders in that room. And I think, Mike could have probably backed off a little bit and let the young, not the young guys, but the leadership group take over. I'm a firm believer today as a coach, you got to let that leadership group be a part of your, like a partnership with the coach. You can't, you can't alienate yourself with a leadership group. You got to let these guys make decisions. They're grown men, and it's a partnership. And I think that's important. And you ask any good coach, if you don't have leadership, it's tough to coach in the league nowadays, even back then. So the leaders can really help. And I think you have to let your leadership, have the wings and grow and run that room sometimes. And I think sometimes Mike wanted to control everything. And but I think there's a method to his madness, when he did that.
Now, Tuck, I want to go back to your game. Your second year at the Flyers, you racked up close to 300 penalty minutes. Obviously, your reputation was going around the league. The Flyers had a very tough team, as we've already established.
Yeah.
Were you finding guys were more willing to challenge you as the season progressed or less? And did you sense the ice was opening up a little bit more for you?
Yeah, the ice was definitely opening up. And like I said, I'll be, straight up. I mean, we had a tough team. So
yes, you did.
They knew, they knew I wasn't going to back down. Like Rick said, hey, I'm not going anywhere. I agree. But I also they're looking on the bench going, I got to fight Todd. I got to fight Berube. Now I got to fight Dave Brown, Daryl Stanley, Glenn Cochran. I mean, these guys are, these guys are scary tough. So, I was lucky to have that backup, but yeah, going into Washington, the Rangers, the Jersey Devils, like the real rivals. I remember early in my career, and those guys told me the first period, make sure your presence, like right off the bat, get on that forecheck, hit a guy, go in front of the net, cross check, like get in front of the net, show them that, hey, it's going to be a tough night. And then, a couple of years later, you're going there, hey, guys, I'm not getting cross-checked as much. Hey, man, I got a deflection where the guy never boxed me out, right? You're getting those all of a sudden you're getting, instead of 14 goals, you're getting like 21 goals. You're getting those extra 6 goals a year that are kind of freebies, right? So, that's just from trying to not play the role, but you're trying to just be a more aggressive and try to get that room.
Yeah, it's kind of a good situation to be in. And like I said, it was, it was tough. It was one of those things that you go through to try and establish yourself in the league. And, like I said, let people know that, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere. But, you went through, you're in your first year, you get almost 500 penalty minutes at one point. And did you say to yourself, do I have to fight anymore, or should I start working on my game? Because obviously you can put up offensive numbers too. So was there a concerted effort?
Yeah, I worked on my game after practice and stuff like that. I knew the first couple of years I had to play this way if I was going to get ice time. I always tell the story. Mike Keenan calls me in his office. We were playing the Calgary Flames at home, and he goes, "Hey, there's a Rick Tocchet jersey in Hershey right now. It's number 22. It's in their locker room. I better see a game tonight from you, right?" So obviously, what does that mean? So I remember I go fight Poplinski, Hunter. I think I fought Neil Shee, 3 fights. And after the game, he goes, "That's more like it." Now, I'm not. It wasn't like he was promoting fighting. He just wanted to make sure I knew my role in the sense that I got to stay aggressive. The games before, I was probably trying to toe drag at the blue line, trying to do the Gretzky pull up after, and it's like no way. So it was a warning, right? So lucky enough, I didn't have to go to the minors. But yeah, those were the tactics he would do once in a while, and I got the message loud and clear.
Well, talk about those teams. Those are pretty good hockey teams, so people aren't following that era. And losing in the finals to Edmonton twice in 3 years, not only are you guys tough, led by guys like yourself and Brown and the other guys you've mentioned, but very highly skilled, as you've also mentioned with Mark Howe, Tim Kurt, Brian Propp. Give the listeners an idea how good those Gretzky-led teams were really.
Well, listen, especially our first, we lost in 5. We had no business. They beat us in 5. We really weren't in it. We gave them some games, but they deserved the game. But we took them 7. We scared them. Wayne's got today, and it was actually a 2-1-1 game late in the third, and when Anderson scored a goal. But I remember Murray. It was 1-1. It was 1-0 for us, and Murray Crib had a 5-on-3. And Rick, you'll know when you're in front of the net, there's a shot, and it went behind Fuhrer, and you either got to go right or left of the goalie, right? He went left, and the puck squirted right. If he goes right, he puts the tap, and it's 2-0 late in the second. Who knows? Hexie was playing, actually won the Conn Smythe that year. We could have locked it down. So we gave him some fits, but I'll tell you, and we didn't have Brad McCrimmon. He was hurt, and Tim Kerr. So You never know. But listen, you played against them. They're a great hockey team. They were phenomenal. They were ahead of their time too. You never wanted to get I think they did that 4-on-4 rule because of those guys.
That's right.
You know, they get open ice, they get a power play. It was deadly, right? So, but it was a great, listen, accelerated my development. It accelerated the late great Peter Zezel, you know, Pelle Eklund, Murray Craven, those guys to be in a first or second, third year in the league and get to play that many games in the playoffs and get to that team, it accelerates your development. That's a really key for especially young guys, you know, like Montreal this year, they go to the finals, you know, the Caulfields, the Suzuki's, these guys, them going to the finals is going to, their development's going to really fast track. And I think that helped us in the Flyers being involved in those big pressure games my first 3-4 years in the league.
Squid, can you add in that?
I can't say I've ever been there, but unfortunately, I think the second round was the furthest I ever got. Even though there was a couple of times in Buffalo, we had a real good team. I think we finished second overall, I think in the regular season, and we lost. But we had to play Boston and Montreal in the playoffs. And, you know, we beat Boston. We lost to Montreal in 6, even though we had a great team. But it was unfortunate because, you know, we never got that opportunity. But you know what? That's the way it goes. I mean, when you think about it, what is there, 700 players roughly in the National Hockey League? And how many have played over the years? About 7,000. And how many have even had a chance to get to the Stanley Cup finals? I mean,
one parade every year. One parade.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Tuck, let's go. Let's take it one step further after that. 1987 Canada Cup tryout for the Canadian team. No cell phones in those days. How did that whole day unfold with the call coming to the house?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Keenan brought up 5 of us. You know, listen, if Mike Keenan, Yzerman and a bunch of guys got cut, right? Mike Keenan's my coach. He's coaching the team Canada, so he brought 5 of us. So, listen, I was lucky enough to Mike to invite me to the camp because I played for him. And I think Mike at that time, he had the Gretzkys, he had the Messiers, the Coffees and Borks and those guys. And I think he was looking for guys that could fill a 4th line role or 3rd line. Like if you look like Dougie Gilmour, who was a star player, and Brent Sutter, those guys filled a 4th line role. So I think he was looking for that. And I knew going in, the one thing I did go in, I was in shape. They did a testing. I was the best shaped guy. I knew the only chance I would make it, I'd have to make an impression there. And I had a really good camp. Like, you know, you have those inter-squad games, and maybe some guys, you know, they don't take it serious. I took it serious. I was scoring. I was hitting guys, and I knew that was my only way to be noticed. And when Mike's, you know, when I made the team, I knew my role. I was like, you know, that 13th, 12th forward, and that was the only way I was going to make that team. But what a great bunch of guys. What a great, like, it was unbelievable to be part of that with those guys. And, you know, against the Russians, I mean, the big bad Russians, you know, Canada we all hated Russia, right? U.S. hated them. And it was just amazing. Like I watched it, it was on, I think, a year ago, and I watched it and I'm like, there's a penalty every shift. Like there was a penalty every shift. I couldn't play nowadays the way I played that. I either got a hook in, a cross check in, a roughing penalty. It was vicious out there. And, you know, I kind of laugh at it, but I'm going, oh my God, there was, how many times do you just hook a guy or you punch a guy in the head? It was crazy.
Well, I remember that summer talk, you were training like a madman, and you actually, we were running a hockey school together, and I ran into you one day and you had a brush cut. And I said, what happened to the hair? And he said, I want to look serious going to camp. And he had that military haircut going in for Keenan. But also your first day at camp, you got a surprise with your roommate. Share the listeners with that little story.
Yeah, that's, like I said, that's Mike Keenan. He roomed with Wayne Gretzky. So, you know, you go in there, you get your, you know, and Rick will tell you, you get your little card key and it says Gretzky Tocchet, right? And I'm like, actually, I'm sorry, it said Wayne. Actually, I shouldn't even say, it doesn't even matter. Wayne Douglas, he went with an alias, right? So he never went with Wayne Gretzky. So I go up there and it's like, you know, he's not there yet. I'm nervous, you know, Wayne Gretzky, and he comes in and he was awesome. Hey, let's go for lunch. And then he started to he was dating Janet Jones at the time, Janet Gretzky, and it was under the radar for about a week. And I remember he said, "Hey, just don't tell anybody." And I remember she actually was in her room a lot, and she'd come in. I'm like, man, she's dating Janet Jones, and it's, nobody knew about it, right? So that was pretty cool. So I roomed with him for about 2-3 weeks. It was awesome, and our friendships kind of started there.
Well, I was going to say, though, that's Keenan, and we always hear negatives about him. I want to make a positive spin on this because he gave you that feel to be around winners because they just beat you guys. They beat you 2 out of 3 years. Listen, winners, you guys can attest to this. They speak differently. They act differently. They carry themselves differently. And I'd suggest this is one of those moments. Some of the excellence Keenan possessed as a coach were exhibited. Would you agree?
Incredible. I owe him. That's why like as much as I say the stories, the negativity, but we all have negative stuff in our career, but he was a big part of my career. And the way Mike, and we used to practice hard, but I remember when Wayne Gretzky and Messi and those guys went on the ice, Anderson, like, man, I didn't know they practiced that hard. And we were taught to practice hard, but man, they practice hard. I mean, they got up and up the ice, down the ice, and a lot of flow drills and a lot of, like ahead of us, like the drills that they were doing is like stuff that they're doing now, right? Coffee joining the rush, the fourth defenseman. That they did that in practice, and right off I learned that like right away. Holy geez, man! You got to make a play in practice. They don't just dump the pucks in and stuff. They want you to make a skilled play. So I learned that, especially that month there and being in Montreal in that training camp. And I actually played with Wayne. It was Wayne, myself, and Brian Propp on a line for about 2 weeks. And I remember him I'm dumping the puck in all the time, going to chase it. And he said, "Hey, hold on to it, wait for me, or look for Koff coming in late." So I started to learn the game a little bit from those guys.
I mean, that's the
Mike,
part of it.
Well, yeah, and Mike, you know what? Mike was unbelievable his practices. I mean, like you said, I know you mentioned earlier, but it was 45 minutes, high tempo. You only had a probably 15 seconds to grab a drink of water, and then on to the next drill. And one of the things I noticed about Mike too, later on when he went to the Rangers and won a Stanley Cup, is he brought in a lot of guys that he really liked on other teams. Like I know in Chicago, he brought Larmer in.
Yes.
He brought in Hudson, I think, and somebody else that, and those are guys that he played a lot and loved.
Yeah. And he because you know what? He establishes, he wants his guys to come in that know him and how to establish an identity. And that's what he did. You're right. Noonan went in there, and I think he it was the Matogo in there, and he brought Glenn Anderson, McTavish, those guys in there. Mm-hmm. And those guys were kind of the missing glue guys. I mean, they had the Kovalevs and obviously Messiers, but those guys were the glue guys that Kevin Lowe went there, that when Mike went crazy, those type of guys would keep the room calm. When you don't have those guys, I was at Canada Cup. I remember a couple of times, like Gretzky and Messi would look at me and go, "Are you guys serious?" They'd look at me like, "Oh yeah." And, one of my favorite stories, not to backtrack because I know you guys like this shit, this stuff is, we had a team meal, right? So back then, Mike was like, no ice cream. He wasn't big into steaks. He wanted, chicken, I think yams instead of some of the white pasta, the stuff that nobody even heard of, right? And I remember Messi and Gretzky going, they go, "Where's the steak?" And the girl goes, "Well, it's not on the order. Mike Keenan didn't want it." So this is when I remember when they flexed their muscles, they went. I remember Messi goes, "Really? I'm taking my whole summer off to do this. I want a friggin' steak." He went into Mike's hotel room with Gretzky. The next half an hour, they had big T-bone steaks right on that dish. So that was something that ate, and ice cream, and they served ice cream. So that Mike didn't win that battle when those boys went in there and said, "Hey, we're giving our summer up. I want ice cream and I want my steak." So that was pretty funny.
Well, didn't Messi also, after you guys beat after an exhibition games, order the whole team White Russians just as a sort of prelude to playing against the Russians?
Oh yeah, we all did a shot at the old White Russian. Yeah, we had a couple of team get-togethers there. Mess would start and just bonding stuff that they did a lot of.
Well, what I want to talk about the final game. Anybody who hasn't watched this series, it's one of the greatest series of all time in hockey. They say that 87 final, those 3 games were unbelievable. The deciding game, Canada's down by 3-0. You cut the lead to 1-2. You had a goal and assist. It was 4-2 ending of the first period. But the Soviets seemed to have an answer for any threat that or to the chagrin of all the Canadian players, and of course, a very nervous nation across Canada watching. Is it true between periods that Grant Fuhr stood up and said, "Get us back in it, boys, I'll hold them off"? And you sat there and you thought, yeah, I've heard this nonsense since I've been in house league. Guys always stand up and yell and chirp. And then all of a sudden you lift your day up, looked around, and then there's Gretzky, there's Lemieux, there's Bourque, there's Messier. Holy shit, we can do this.
Yeah, Grant Fuhr was he's probably the best goalie ever to play where he's down 3-0. You're not going to score the fourth goal. I mean, if you ask the Edmonton guys, how many times they'd let up them. Those guys want to play offense. So the first period, I mean, Kov used to tell me he'd go to him before the game. Hey, Furzy, I'll see you after the game, because those guys were looking for offense, right? But Furzy did say he was real calm. He goes, guys, just get a goal, but get back in here. I'm gonna shut the door, and he did. I mean, like some of the goals they got, I mean, they had no chance, but he stopped the 2-0, and he was incredible. Yeah, but there was a calmness there too, even though when we were down. And when you look around, and when you look at Gretzky and Lemieux and Bourque and Coffey, like there wasn't a panic. I'm a young guy. I'm like, I'm nervous. Like I'm like, wide eyes, and I'm looking around and I'm watching these guys, drink their water and, okay, we got this, relax. It really calmed my nerves down. And I owe those guys a lot, because they've been through it before, so they understand it. And I think that really helped the calmness of the team.
I watched the documentary they did on Grant Fuhr, and it was quite interesting. It was really, really good, actually. It kind of showed exactly what he was like. There was, I don't know how many times during the documentary was exactly what you said, Mike, and Rick. Like they get 4 or 5, and he goes, guys, they're not getting any more. All you need to do is get one more than them. And sure enough, he would do it every goddamn time. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, it's Squid. We all, we practice. We take shots on the goalie. Sometimes it gets away from us. And I remember watching Edmonton practice, or even the guys, and those guys tee it up one time. They're hitting his collarbone, they're hitting him off the mask, and the guy never got mad. The guy was like the incredible guy. Like I remember I hit him one time with a one-timer, and I didn't, my shot was okay. And I went, hey, Fuhrs, I'm sorry. He goes, don't be afraid. Fuck, tee it up. Like, tee it up. And I'm like, if you did that to Ron Hextall, he's chasing you with a stick like he's going to chop you if you got one high. So, yeah, he was his demeanor was incredible for that Oiler team. He was the perfect goalie for the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah.
And by the way, Keenan's going to owe us because we've been pumping his tires so much this podcast. Okay, I'm going to say one final thing about the guy, and you better be listening, Mike. 3-0, and he didn't pull Fuhr. That number one, and Keenan was, he had the quick trigger to pull goalie, so that was a benefit to him to smell something. But the other two things here, Talk. One, that 87 team came together so quickly as a team. Player, and you now as a coach probably can appreciate it. And Squid, you too come from the coach. Players knew their role, which I think was the key to victory. A lot of guys, including yourself, as you mentioned already, weren't checkers, even though you were a little bit, but guys were scorers on their regular teams. And now all of a sudden you were called upon to do this. You can be a ruthless killer in sports.
Yeah, listen, and I think that's what Mike, and listen, you look at Tampa Bay winning too, and you watch some of the way their role players, the Coleman, the Goudreaus, the Maroons, whether they got 10 minutes or 9 minutes, they did their job, right? And I think that's something a lot of teams, sometimes, hey, your best player is going to play a lot. And sometimes as a role player, you're going to have to accept it sometimes, your role. And I knew my role. And I remember it was Mike and Squid, it was 3-0. We had a 5-on-3. And I'm in the middle of the bench, right? Fourth line guy. And he goes, he hits me like, get out there. I didn't go. He punches my shoulder and he goes, get out there. Like, are you out of your mind? Like, are you out of your mind? We got Goulet, even Goulet and Larmer, those guys, get them out there. So I went out there, and obviously the puck came out. I scored, yeah. and then I stayed out there with Brent Sutter and Prop. We scored another goal. But after that, I knew. Like, I didn't play as much of that second. Now the big boys started to play, and I had my share of shifts. But and then the last minute, he had me out there. So you just got to accept your roles, especially in these big pressure moments, and you got to be a team guy. And I think teams like if you look at Tampa, the reason why, and I talked to John Cooper about this 3-4 years ago. a lot of those guys accepted their roles, like the Stamkos. If you look at him, he's not playing the 20 minutes a night like he used to play. He's playing 17 minutes because he knows, hey, we got to get Gaudreau and Coleman out, those guys out there sometimes. And those guys accepted that. Sometimes the higher end guys, they want their minutes too. And it kind of is a detriment. And I didn't see that in the Canada Cup team at all.
Well, the Canada Cup, what I noticed too is guys, they weren't worried about, like, even the stars, like Dale Hawerchuk was part of that. And
yes,
and he didn't play a real prominent role. He was more of a third line guy. And, but when it came down to it, he was put out there in the big moment and he came through, So, I mean, it's kind of one of those things. And Mike was good at that too. Mike was really good at getting guys to buy into different roles than they're normally used to playing on their regular teams when he would go and put together like a Canada Cup team. And I always respected him for his ability to do that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Now, talk 8 seasons in Philly, you get sent to Pittsburgh. Your emotions, you're going from a team that's not doing as well as Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's a very good team coming off the Stanley Cup. What was your emotions going through all of that period?
Well, listen, and Ricky touched on this about 15 minutes ago about, he going to, having some teams not quite good enough to go far. And, but you got to be lucky, listen, Philly was about to rebuild and I go to Pittsburgh, an all-star team. You got Jagr, Mullen, you got Francis Lemieux, like these are Hall of Fame guys. So I was so lucky to get traded there, right? People that win Stanley Cups, you got to be lucky too. It's just not all about. So that was one thing when I went there, and actually when they went, they were struggling. They lost their identity. I think they were close to 500, and I know that they had to shake up the deal. They wanted to get some toughness there. Mario was getting taken advantage of, and it was just a match made in heaven for me. It was a phenomenal, great group of guys, great organization. Craig Patrick was terrific to play for. Scotty Bowman, another genius behind, a real smart guy behind the bench. Yeah. So really, guys, very lucky to get that team and win a Stanley Cup. We won, I think, what did we win? 9 or 10 straight, 11 straight to win the Cup. That team we were on all cylinders at the end of the last 6 weeks. We didn't lose many hockey games. So it was an incredible ride for me, and be able to get out of Philly to go to that team was incredible.
Now, Tocchet, I was going to ask you, is it true that you once straightened a young, immature Jaromir Jagr out over an incident? He threw his sweater on the floor after a practice in the hockey row, which is a no-no?
Listen, Yogs is one of my favorite guys, but Yogs was an immature guy, back then. He was a guy that he would pout a little bit. He's a young kid. You got to remember, he's 19 years old. Like my son, he's 21. He pouts, So one time he was mad after a game. He threw the jersey, and I grabbed him. I said, "Go pick your jersey up." That does. So it was just a lesson. No big deal. No. He was great. He understood. He understood it, and and he passed it down. I'm sure, on all the teams he went to, he probably preached the same thing. But Yogs was I'll tell you what. I think he had the biggest birthday party. They had his 19th birthday party in Pittsburgh, and it was at a sports bar, and I think there was over 1,500 people. 1,400 were girls. It was incredible.
So he was doing something right, that's for sure. Now, I only point that out to highlight the significance of the smallest issues can fester over a team. Attention to detail, respect, honor, all these things are not cliches with winning teams. As you know, both you guys know as coaches, they're part of the fabric of a good hockey club. You think Michael Jordan or Wayne Gretzky would put up with the slightest small negative around the team? Never.
Yeah, I have moments, and I'm sure Rick does, as a young player, and I try to teach the young players today about leadership. I think it was my second year. I had the long hair. I thought I made it. I'm in the NHL. We went to the finals the year before, and we had a practice. I thought we were supposed to get a day off. We didn't. We were in there, and I was bitching and complaining, and this is a joke, and whatever. And I remember Brad McCrimmon and Mark Howe told me to, hey, shut up, put your ass on, put your skates out, and get the hell out there, and kind of read the riot act on me. And I tail between my legs, I went out there, and I'm like, man, these guys tore a strip on me. So after practice, I'm showering. I remember Brad McCrimmon peeks his head and, hey, hurry up, we're going for lunch. And him and Mark Howe took myself out, and I think it was Derek Smith out to Kaminsky's, like an old watering hole that the guys used to go, and bought a bunch of beers, had some lunch. Never even mentioned anything about what happened. They tore a strip. They just talked about, they bought me lunch and we stood there for 4 hours, had some beers. And it was just a lesson. Hey, you know, it was their way of saying, hey, man, we got your back. And we tore a strip off you. But you know, this is we got your back. And I think that's important that veteran players do these young guys, and, you know, teach them a lesson, but also kind of explain to them why, you know, why we're doing these things. And it's a hell of a life. You know, would you rather be working on a construction site or, you know, going to practice for an hour, and making some pretty good money? So I think I learned that early on in my career.
Squid, can you add to that?
So, I mean, those moments arise a lot. And I remember when I was in Toronto and you're the captain, and, you know, you don't want to make a big deal out of it. You don't want everybody to get all, you know, bent out of shape. Yeah. So you quietly go to someone and just say, listen, let's go for lunch, you know, and you just sit there and you kind of just tell them, you know, the way it is. And it's like, we can't have you doing that in the dressing room. If you want to go home and do that at home, go ahead. I don't really give a shit. But around the rink and everything, we got to have a positive attitude as much as we possibly can. And that was the best way to kind of take care of those things back then anyway. Yeah, you're right. And it's, you know, and you were a captain, you know, it's not always pleasant to always tell guys this and that. And, but it's something you got to do. And, you know, that's where other guys got to help the captain. Like the captain it can't be just all on him. You got to have that. You got to have those henchmen around him. I know coaching in Pittsburgh, like Sid Crosby, he's a phenomenal player and leader, great guy. But you know, the guys that I remember, as much as Sid was great, the Nick Boninos, the Matt Cullens, the Patrick Hornquist, you know, Trevor Daley, these guys were men. And, you know, they helped Sid out, and they would say stuff that maybe Sid didn't always want to say. And it goes a long way to having those type of guys. So guys that, it's just not the captain, the lone wolf. The captain needs help, and I think the good teams have those guys that help. What? Yeah, I was pretty lucky. I guess I had Boreas Salming, who was right beside me, and of course he was Harold's favorite guy too. He could do no wrong in Harold's eyes, so I had him backing me all the time. So all I had to worry about was I didn't have to worry about a whole lot because I had Boreas right beside me. And every time I said something, he said, listen to him. So it was kind of neat.
Yeah, when he got in trouble, you had Ronnie Ellis to cover it off.
And I had Ronnie Ellis on the other side. That was the only downside about Boreas on one side, Ronnie Ellis on the other. And it was like that cartoon where you got the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other. And it's like, which way do you go? But unfortunately, I went a little bit more towards the devil's side, Boreas' side.
I was going to say, now talk, it's been said, Mario, we talked about Wayne, a little bit more about Wayne here with Mario, but Mario's greatest player as he didn't really know how to become a real champion until he played with Gretzky in the 87 Canada Cup. And I think he's even admitted that. You know, it's no coincidence the few years Pittsburgh finally hoisted the cup. I would say, now, is that a fair assessment, first off? And secondly, you saw Mario as a teammate in 87 winning a championship, and 5 years later, you won a Stanley Cup together. Did you notice a difference in his approach to the game over that time period?
Yes. You know, when Mario, especially those last 3 games, obviously the big goal, if you watch him play the game as the tournament went on, I never seen the guy backcheck like that. I never seen him go and take draws and get, like, actually, Mike, go take a draw and get off the ice. Merrill, you come off the ice, and he did it. Like, you watch him take the draw, win it, and he'd skate hard to the bench. And when I got to Pittsburgh, I saw, even as the years went on, 88, his game, obviously he got the points, but even like when we went to Stanley Cup, he was instrumental. We were 3 games to 1 down to Washington. I don't know if people know the story. Some people will know. Yep. He went to Scotty Bowman. We got to change our neutral zone against Washington because Washington had, I think they had 4 20 goal scorers. I don't think a team's ever done that before. Where they had Sylvain Cote, Hatcher. They had Ally Frady. I think Sylvain Cote. They all had 20 goals, and they were killing us off the rush, right? And we went to this 1-4, and that was Mario Lemieux's idea. You're talking about a guy that gets 3 points a game. We're going, hey, I want to play 1-4. And we clogged up that middle, and the series changed, and we won 3 straight. We killed them. And that was Mario Lemieux. A lot of people don't know that he's the guy that went in Sky. Let's do this 1-4. So he learned how to win games, play a 200-foot game, especially in the crunch time. He scored unbelievable goals, but there was times where he was instrumental in a defensive play that won us the game.
So Rick, you won the Stanley Cup. Like, was it everything that you expected? Like when you played road hockey growing up and dreaming about winning a Stanley Cup, or was it even bigger than that?
I think it was bigger, Rick. I think it was bigger. You are, it's you play. I remember playing a Lillian Drive, scoring a goal. Hey, pretending you won the cup and running around the street with a fake cup. It was incredible. I know when Mario passed the cup to me, it just makes everything worth it, and you look around, the best thing is you look around your teammates, because, you might not play for, you might have the same guys on your team, or you might not even be there. But for that moment, for that year, all that hard work and all the stuff that guys had sacrificed, it's well worth it. I mean, the money's great and all this stuff, but I'll tell you, at the end of the day, I was very lucky to be able to hoist that thing. And like you said yourself, not getting a chance, because a lot of it has to be with luck. Obviously you have to make your own luck. I get it. Mm-hmm. But when you have players like that, and you can smell it. I mean, I remember saying to Kevin Stevens, we beat Washington and we had kind of a scare there. And I said, man, we can't take this for granted, man. And I don't think we played a bad game after that. I know the Rangers, we beat them in 6, and then Boston in 4, and then Chicago in 4. We didn't play a bad game after that. It was like guys didn't take it for granted. I thought early in the series, early in the playoffs, we were kind of, we rolled through Jersey, I think in 4 or 5. This is going to be easy. But Washington gave us a scare, and then I kind of woke us all up saying, hey, man, we might never get a chance again. So you got to make sure you bang the door down.
And you did.
I think that's the biggest thing is, like you said, some people never get an opportunity. When you get that opportunity, you may never get back there. As I've heard that said so many times. And I one of the things I remember growing up is my father would never let us stay up past the first period. But every year when the Stanley Cup was given out, he would wake us up and bring us down and let us watch the Stanley Cup being given out. And that was one of the coolest things for me growing up was, just saying like, oh man, I hope I get a chance to do that one day. And unfortunately I never did, but it was just so cool to see growing up time year after year. And most of the time it was Montreal, unfortunately, back then. But anyway, it was kind of cool to see.
Well, boys, we're getting into the third period of our session here, so we want to get into some other things here with you. We could go on all day, as I said, but the coaching, how did that come about and get started with you?
Yeah, so I retired, I think it was 04, 05, and I remember, Rick, when you retire, it's like, I'm going to take some time off. I don't know what I was going to do, playing some golf, some trips here and there, and about 2 months in, I'm like, man, I got to do something. I'm going to get in trouble here. If
I'm bored.
And you got to remember, we're structured guys, right? 10 o'clock bus, 11:30 practice. You eat at this time. You do this. So when that's taken away from you, it's like, you're like, what do we do now, right? I need structure in my life. So the great late Pierre Lacroix called me and asked me if I wanted to be assistant coach in Colorado with Tony Granato. And I jumped at it. And so it was December. I went out there and I joined the Colorado Avalanche. I mean, Joe Sakic, Peter Forsberg, Adam Foote, Alex Tanguay, Hayduk, like Robbie Blake. So I went there as a young assistant coach, didn't really know about coaching, and kind of learned my craft and just to be able to be with those guys and talk hockey and some system stuff with them. So that kind of kickstarted my coaching career. Doing that. And then obviously, I took about 3-4 years. I got fired and I didn't get a job for 3-4 years. And then I got back in it again. Mario got me back in Pittsburgh. So, I've coached about 15, 16 years and it's in your blood,
Biggest difference between coaching and playing?
Well, you can control things as a player. The coach, you can only do so much. And then, you got to hand it off to the player and hopefully, he absorbs what you say, and you want them to be creative too and have their own identity, but also, they control their own destiny too, to a point. So I think it's just control. I know as a player, if I went on the ice, I can control what I did. As a coach, you can only do so much. Head coach, obviously, you have obviously a lot more control, but as an assistant coach, not as much. So it's a control thing.
Squid, you have that same comment or thoughts too, don't you?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with Rick more. I mean, when you're on the ice and you're playing, you can control certain things. Maybe you can't control everything, but you can control a lot of what's going on the ice. But when you're behind the bench, I mean, you got to leave it up to the players. And I think we're both kind of wired the same. We're kind of control freaks, and we got to keep busy and keep going. But coaching was great. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun doing it. I met a lot of great people while I was coaching, and I only got to the American League, never to the NHL. But I got to ask Rick a question. I think because in my mind anyway, and I want to get your opinion. Would you say that probably your ability to communicate with the players is probably one of the biggest things you can do as a coach, as far as being a good coach?
Yeah, I think that's it, Rick. That's the one thing that when I go for these interviews, I always tell the guys straight up, listen, I can X and O you to death. I can sit here and tell you basically every team, the X and O's, what they're man on man, or this team's a 1-2-2. Like all the teams do the same thing. 85%. It's the 15% to me that is the difference. And communication is it. You got to be a partner with a player. Like if you think, you're not, you got to be a partner with a player. You got to communicate. You got to tell them why. These guys want to know why. It's the why generation. These guys are on their phones a lot. They're on social media. So, you're not going to get one by these guys. So to me, it's like, I tell them, I explain what we're going to do in practice. And I tell them, here's the reasons why we want to do this. And there's a reason why I'm going to skate a little bit out practices, because we have these games coming up. We're playing this team and we got this. So I try to explain everything I do. Back there, the coaches do this and you do it. Now you gotta explain it. And your door's always open. I mean, that's not a cliche. And you're going to have some guys come in and you have to deal with different personalities. Like dealing with a Phil Kessel is different than dealing with an Alex Goligoski or a Clayton Keller. They're all different. And as a coach, you got to be able to communicate in different ways with different personalities. Some guys you can get after, some guys you can't. To me, it's a 24-hour job too. Like a lot of my calls, especially in Arizona, I get a lot of young guys. I mean, you're talking them at 9 o'clock at night. Some guys want to talk to you. They'll call you at 9. Something's on their mind or something happened in practice they didn't like, and and I always tell them, like, don't go to sleep without getting off your chest. So, especially nowadays, it's a 24-hour job, and you got to be willing to put those hours in on a communication side of it. And the mental aspect is really important than the physical.
Well,
yeah, it's so important, I think, because I remember every day going to practice, I would pick 3 guys that I was going to have a conversation with that day. Not necessarily about hockey, could be about a bunch of different things. I always gave them all my cell number. I said, listen, if you need to call me, I don't care if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you call me. And I think that's so important. And it's funny you mentioned the guys of today. I mean, back in our day, when the coach said, run through that wall, you asked them how you did on your way back. And you ask them how you did on your way back. And now if you say that to a player today, they go, why? And what's in it for me?
Right.
And you got to explain everything. It's like,
or speak to their agent.
Different than it was. Or call his agent and say, I want him to run through that wall, and he won't do it.
Now, you both have touched on what makes a good coach. And we've had guys like Gabby Boudreau, Jared Bednar on and talk to Echo and Ricky, almost exactly what you guys have said verbatim about communication in the X's and O's. But the goal of any coach or any leader for that matter is to be loved and respected by those under your command. Let's all face it, we all would love that. But I'll ask you this. Would it be better to be loved or respected in your view by your players, and why?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the word respect is, everybody uses that word and, love and all that stuff. I agree. But to me, it's like, I think when you leave the game or you talk to a player that you coach or play with, hey, this guy was an upfront, fair guy, like up front, like I stand up guy, they know where you stand. Yep. I might not like something you did or not agree with, but I think they understand, like, I'm going to tell it to them and we're going to talk about it and we can agree to disagree, but I'm not going to go behind their back, and I'm not going to. I'm not a whisperer. I hate the whispering, And I remember picking even my staff. I used to tell assistant coaches, if you're a whisperer, I found out you're whispering, you're not going to last long with me. I'd rather a guy tell me, hey, Talk, I disagree. Playing this guy in a line tonight, and here's the reasons why, and I think, we should go this way. Then a guy just agree with you, and then he whispers behind your back. I knew you failed that night. I knew we shouldn't have played that guy with that guy. It's no different as a player, your teammate, guys that talk behind your back or whatever. Like, that's the one thing I've always tried to have mantra is, like, when, you talk to Rick Tocchet, you're going to get the honest truth. And I might not have, listen, I'm going to be wrong sometimes, and I'm willing, and to be good or to win, you have to be willing to be, to walk that tightrope. You fall sometimes, you just got to get back up. So to me, it's being fair and a stand-up guy. I think that's really important as a coach and as a player.
Yep. Well, I was going to say, one of your early successes, as we're down to a few minutes here, one of your early successes calls as a coach, I think, was playing Steven Stamkos as a rookie in Tampa when your predecessor, Barry Melrose, wouldn't play him. He didn't think he was ready. What did you see in Stammer as an 18-year-old that gave you the confidence to play him?
Well, listen, Stammer was obviously he's a hell of a player, he's probably made the Hall of Fame. When I took over, I remember saying, like, Stammer would play a really good game, and then that next game, not so good, because listen, 18-year-old, Rick, those junior guys. I mean, it's hard to play it's hard to play back-to-back game against men, right? So what I said was, you know what I'm going to do, and I talked to, actually I called his agent, I talked to him, his dad. His dad's a phenomenal guy too. He's a great guy. I remember saying, I'm going to play him 2 games in a row, and then I'm going to have him train with Gary Roberts in the gym and give him a couple of days off. And I remember I did that. We kind of patterned the games, and his play, as we did, got better and better and better. He'll tell you Stammer was the best thing for him. By the end of the year, he was playing every game, and he was scoring goals, and I think he scored 50 goals for me the next year. So I kind of had to look outside the box with him, and I wanted him to know that if he did this path, and it wasn't a punishment, it was just, you're an 18-year-old kid, instead of just not playing him and no reason why, and playing him 6 minutes on the bench. When I played him, and he played. And I think that was the best thing I thought at the time, and it kind of worked out for him.
Fantastic. I mean, now, besides the obvious, what is the key ingredient you look for in a player to play for you? I would say hard work, first off.
For a player?
Yeah.
Well, I'm a big self-starter, guys. You take a player out, you go over some stuff, hey, puck protection in the corner, or, hey, this, shot release, these different angles, and you go work with these guys. But what I love to see is the next day, these guys are doing it on their own. Do I got to go tell the guy, hey, come on, let's go do, hey, come on, come on, Gens, let's go, or Clayton Keller, come on. That's the one thing I like. I call them self-starters, and it happened in Pitt for me, because I used to I love being on the ice with the guys, and a lot of those guys, the Gensels and Rust, and even Crosby. I mean, Crosby out there half an hour before ice. We do drills before practice would start, just little things that they'd want to work on. I wouldn't be on the ice, and these guys are doing it the next day. So I think a self-starter is something that really, as a coach, I look for that. I go on the ice and I see guys working on stuff on their own. That's really an eye opener for me. Because it means the guy's, he's trying to work on his game, and he doesn't need to be babysat. He's actually leading in his own way.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that, Rick. I mean, it's funny. I used to go out half an hour before practice, before anybody got on the ice, with a whole bucket of pucks, and just practice going down the wing and firing pucks, and one after another after another. And I mean, it paid off. And you're right. I mean, those are the guys you want, the guys with character, and the guys that go out and do their own thing and practice and get better on their own, so that you don't have to be in their ear all the time telling them that.
Well, boys, I couldn't agree with you guys more. And the clock is always against us. Squid, Talk. You've been a fantastic guest. Great seeing you, man. And best of luck moving forward. I know you're going to be behind the bench before too long, or maybe behind a microphone. I'll just guess at that one, maybe. But you'll be doing something in hockey, I'm sure. But anyway,
I appreciate it, guys. It's like too bad this wasn't happy hour. It would be a little bit longer.
It sure would.
Yeah.
Okay, Talk. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Hey, guys. Take
Thanks,
care,
Rick.
guys.